This is one of the most famous photos in history. On the left is Itzhak Rabin, Prime Minister of Israel. On the right is Yasser Arafat, Chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization. And in the middle is American President Bill Clinton. They had just signed the Oslo Peace Accord.
Everybody was optimistic because what happened then was not something easy to happen.
That was a very special day.
It seemed like anything and everything was possible.
So how did it all go so wrong?
The Oslo Peace Accords came after a series of major wars in the Middle East. The war really began in 1948 with the proclamation of the State of Israel.
לפיכך נתכנסנו, אנו חברי מועצת העם, נציגי היישוב העברי והתנועה הציונית, אנו מכריזים בזאת על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל. היא מדינת ישראל.
This proclamation was in response to the UN Partition Plan of 1947. Under this plan, the Holy Land of Jerusalem would be under international control, while the rest of the land of Palestine would be divided into two. 55% of the land would go toward a Jewish state, and 45% of the land would form an Arab state. But this was a very controversial move.
The Arab world in 1947, in terms of popular opinion, would have been strongly opposed to the creation of a Jewish state on Arab land.
And so, while Israel accepted the UN partition plan and declared itself a state, Palestine did not.
What happened thereafter was a war.
Israel expanded its boundaries from the 55% or so that has been promised to them in 1947 to about 78% of Palestine.
The remaining land fell under the control of Egypt and Jordan.
1967, you have another war between Israel and Arab states, what we call the Six-Day War between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. Israel conquers and occupies the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, as well as the Gaza Strip. It occupies the Golan Heights on the Syrian side, and occupies the West Bank and Jerusalem. It takes East Jerusalem from Jordan.
While Israel clearly won the war in 1967, it did not win the peace. For years, minor clashes persisted with its Arab neighbors. Within 6 years, it broke out again into all-out war. In 1973, on the Israeli holy day of Yom Kippur, a coalition of Arab countries led by Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. It was the fourth Arab-Israeli war in 25 years. While Israel prevailed again, the advances made by Arab forces in the first few days of the surprise attack shook Israel's sense of security.
Back in 1973, after the Yom Kippur War, when Israel almost lost that war, in a way that kind of paved the way for the normalization of relations between Egypt and Israel. Late 1970s, the Camp David Accords.
This was the first peace treaty between Israel and an Arab neighbor after 3 decades of fighting, the Camp David Accords in 1978.
Camp David was about bringing the Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli PM at that time, Menachem Begin, to the US presidential retreat of Camp David in Maryland.
Then US President Jimmy Carter had committed himself to working towards a Middle East peace settlement. So, he invited both leaders to a summit.
Anwar Sadat basically recognized that it was not going to be able to militarily vanquish Israel, had already made some openings to Israel that perhaps we can find a peaceful solution that would enable Egypt to regain the Sinai Peninsula.
It was about reaching a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel.
Together, we shall proceed to build a viable structure for peace.
It was a watershed. It was a major landmark in the timeline because it was the first time an Arab country would establish relations with Israel and, more importantly, recognize it.
And this led to a separate peace between Israel and Egypt. But Egypt, Anwar Sadat couldn't entirely leave the Palestinians out. So the Camp David Accords included a commitment by Israel, backed by Egypt, to engage in negotiations with the Palestinians.
But while Israel declared itself a state after the UN partition plan, Palestine did not. So, who would represent the Palestinians? By the late 1970s, that would fall to the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO. The PLO was a collation of various Palestinian political groups, the largest of which is this group you see here, called Fatah. And the head of Fatah was a man named Yasser Arafat, who also became the PLO chairman.
When the PLO was established, the goal was simple: to restore and regain those parts of Palestine that in 1948 had become the State of Israel. So the goal was to destroy the State of Israel.
The PLO wanted to establish an independent and sovereign Palestinian state, taking over the land that was given to Israel in the UN partition plan.
So, while Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, it continued to occupy the Golan Heights, as well as the two Palestinian territories of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The negotiations that were supposed to take place between Israel and the PLO never did.
But Israel continued to settle Jews in the territories. And this anger among Palestinians for being occupied by Israel just built up and built up. And then in 1987, at the very end of the year, December, a kind of minor incident happened in Gaza where I think a truck driven by an Israeli accidentally killed a Palestinian, and it just set off a conflagration. Palestinians began an uprising, the first Intifada, in Gaza and in the West Bank. And for a good 6 years, there was an uprising characterized by confronting Israeli troops, sporadic acts of violence, killing Jewish civilians, both in the West Bank and Gaza and in Israel itself.
In the 1970s, the PLO had a significant presence in Lebanon, where Yasser Arafat and the PLO had relocated after it was expelled from Jordan in 1970. This was disrupted in 1982 when Israel invaded Lebanon in the Lebanese Civil War and expelled the PLO leadership, including Yasser Arafat, who then relocated to Tunisia. This created a situation where the PLO was physically separated from the Palestinian territories that it wanted to liberate.
But what happened in Intifada was that it became clear that there was a strong Palestinian leadership in Palestine, in the West Bank and Gaza, and Arafat needed to come in somehow to see how to regain control and to delegitimize his competitor.
Arafat decided to alter his approach towards negotiation and moderation. He decided to tone down and recognize that in order to reach a solution to the Palestinian problem, he had to also recognize Israel as a state.
بسم الله وباسم الشعب وباسم الشعب العربي الفلسطيني قيام دولة فلسطين فوق أرضنا الفلسطينية فوق أرضنا الفلسطينية وعاصمتها القدس الشريف.
In 1988, Palestine declared themselves a state at a meeting for the Palestine National Council, the legislative body of the PLO. This official document was issued after the meeting. It includes the Declaration of Independence that you just heard and a political statement implying acceptance of UN resolutions 242 and 338. Inherent in these UN resolutions is the recognition of Israel's right to exist. Although not many countries recognized Palestine's statehood at that time, this concession did kickstart a series of peace talks.
That process led to a negotiation with the United States, under which the United States would recognize the Palestine Liberation Organization as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, in exchange for the PLO recognizing the existence of the State of Israel and denouncing the armed struggle.
So Israel really wanted a formal recognition of its right to exist. And Israel wanted peace and security. Israel wanted the first Intifada to stop.
And so Israel was at a point in the early 1990s where it was willing to talk to the Palestinians and willing to discuss Palestinian national aspirations. And that essentially was the basis for the Oslo Accords. The initiative really was by non-governmental people. It was Israeli activists who engaged the Palestinian side.
Two Israeli academics who themselves were engaged in a direct conversation hosted by Norway, hence the Oslo process. And this was a secret back channel where essentially these academics off the record were having conversations about what would it take to bring Israel and the Palestinians together.
One of those academics was Dr. Yair Hirschfeld, who wrote the very first draft of the document signed at the White House in 1993.
I went through a 12 years trial and error learning phase. We spoke to them. I created trust. I created a network of support with the Palestinians. What happened to me then was that the Palestinians had a lot of trust in me. They gave me all their negotiating papers. I saw what their positions are, and we checked how we could bridge the gap.
CNA managed to obtain documents from the Israeli archives that provide a glimpse of some of these early negotiations. This set of documents is a 54-page handwritten transcript of a conversation between Ahmed Kureh, one of the PLO's leaders, also known as Abu Allah, and Yoel Singer, an Israeli legal advisor who had been tasked to turn Dr. Hirschfeld's draft into a legal agreement. In order to do that, Singer posed some 40 questions to Abu Allah. They discuss everything from the wording of certain phrases in the agreement, like international supervision versus agreed supervision with international observers, to what powers the new Palestinian governing body should have. Here, they consider the difference between an interim agreement, which the Oslo Accords were, and a final permanent status agreement, which the Oslo Accords were supposed to lead to. This smaller rectangle shows the limited jurisdiction and powers of a self-governing authority under an interim agreement. And the larger rectangle signifies the additional powers that will be granted to this authority in a final and permanent agreement. This set of handwritten notes shows some draft agreements between Israel and the PLO. It affirms the PLO's commitment to peace, its renouncement of terrorism, and an agreement to end the Intifada. This document would later form the basis of these two letters, the PLO-Israeli Letters of Mutual Recognition, signed by Itzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat 4 days before the ceremony at the White House. The negotiators had to tread carefully because peace deals between Israel and Arab countries had historically been very controversial. Remember the 1978 Camp David Accords?
Egypt said it was able to give itself a certain amount of cover with the Palestinians and the rest of the Arab world by making sure that in the process itself, it included that there would be a commitment by Israel towards a longer peace process with Israel and the Palestinians. Those negotiations never moved forward, though. Egypt was ostracized by the rest of the Arab world, including the Palestinians, who were quite upset about this, because Egypt was essentially abandoning the rest of the Arab world, which had said no to negotiations, no to peace, no to recognizing Israel.
So, to most Arabs, Sadat had betrayed the Palestinian cause. On October 6, 1981, Sadat was assassinated by a group of Islamist extremists. They were led by a lieutenant in the Egyptian army with connections to a terrorist group. This would come to foreshadow the Oslo Accords. But on September 13, 1993, when Israeli PM Itzhak Rabin and PLO chairman Yasser Arafat signed the agreement, there was nothing but optimism.
Welcome to this great occasion of history and hope. Today, we bear witness to an extraordinary act in one of history's defining dramas.
Watching Bill Clinton, Yasser Arafat, and Yitzhak Rabin on the White House lawn sign a historic agreement, it was extremely hopeful. I mean, you had, for the first time ever, an opportunity to not only begin a negotiation, but to humanize and personalize relations between Israeli and Palestinian leaders.
This bold new venture today, this brave gamble that the future can be better than the past, must endure.
If you watch this shot of the ceremony closely, you'll see a pop of color amid the sea of black and white suits. A group of spectators on the left in teal blue t-shirts. Firas Ashia, a Palestinian who was just 13 at the time, was one of them.
I remember it was a sunny day. It was very hot in Washington, D.C.
Firas had just spent his summer at a camp in Maine, the first of its kind, bringing together Israeli and Palestinian children to foster peace from a young age.
And back then we received an invitation that they want us to attend the peace signing ceremony at the White House in 1993. And it was the first time after 50 years you see both leaders from both sides meeting together, shaking hands with together, standing together in the White House lobby. That was a big thing to adjust. It was a very touching moment. It was very emotional, and we literally couldn't believe it. So I think the first victory we have is that as Palestinians, we've been recognized all across the globe. So to us, that helped the cause, that the Palestinians do exist, that the Palestinians has right in the land, that the Palestinians has a leadership to represent them, which is present at the White House.
So, what exactly was signed at the White House?
It was this, an 18-page long document called the Declaration of Principles on Interim Self-Government Arrangements, or DOP. It has 4 parts to it, the most important of which is this, the main articles. It opens with Article 1, which states the aim of the negotiations.
The aim of Israeli-Palestinian negotiations within the current Middle East peace process is, among other things, to establish a Palestinian interim self-government authority, the elected council, the Council for the Palestinian People in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, for a transitional period not exceeding 5 years, leading to a permanent settlement based on Security Council Resolution 242 and 338.
The first part of the aims were achieved. After the signing of the Accords, the Palestinian Authority, or PA, was established. But if you look further down at Article 4, which describes what the PA's powers are, it states that the PA would not have control over issues that will be negotiated in the permanent status negotiations.
It's very important to note here that one of the things about the Oslo process is that it kicked down the road some of these what were called final status issues.
Some of these issues were Jerusalem. Who controls it? Refugees. Whether Palestinian refugees expelled during the 1948 war were able to return to their homes. Settlements. What to do about them? Security arrangements. Who was responsible for internal and external security in the occupied territories? And borders. How would they be drawn?
And one of those final status issues was statehood. Was there going to be a Palestinian state? Was it going to be a state with borders? Where were those borders going to be? The Oslo process itself included no reference to statehood, didn't say that this process is going to lead to the creation of a Palestinian state. The Palestinians wanted for there to be statehood. Israel was still at the time unsure whether or not the process was going to lead towards statehood or not. It's unclear whether Yitzhak Rabin had ever made a formal decision.
Problems began almost immediately over the interpretation of these agreements, whether each side was fulfilling its commitments.
In letters signed in conjunction with the DOP, the PLO had declared that it renounces the use of terrorism and other acts of violence.
Arafat was a complex figure, a flawed leader, and he actually, from time to time, was complicit with terror organization. So from time to time, he let Hamas operate against Israel. But at the same time, on the Palestinian side, they felt that Israelis would constantly postpone measures with regards to the Palestinian sovereignty. And one major element was the expansion of Israeli settlements, either in Gaza or in the West Bank.
From the 1980s onwards, Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem increased at steady rates. This meant that not only did Israel not return the land, they took up more land.
So when you put two parties who are very unequal in terms of power at a bargaining table, then it's obvious that the much stronger party is in a position to be able to veto any kind of terms of resolution that it doesn't want or doesn't agree with. And that's why each of the successive peace processes over the last 30 years, launched largely by the United States under the auspices of the Oslo framework, have wound up failing because it always allows Israel to be in an extraordinarily superior negotiating position.
A young Netanyahu, who had not yet become prime minister, he had just taken over as the leader of the Likud party. He did not believe that territorial compromise, and certainly not compromise with the PLO, Israel's sworn enemy, from his perspective, was possible. It was something Israel wanted, so he fought the Oslo Accords tooth and nail.
2 years after the 1993 signing on the White House lawn, Arafat and Rabin meet again to sign the related but more detailed Oslo II Accord. And just 2 months after that, on November 4, 1995, Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated.
Rabin was assassinated precisely because he was pushing the Oslo Accords forward, and the assassin, a right-wing Israeli extremist, believed that by assassinating Yitzhak Rabin, he would be able to derail the process.
Despite the progress made in all of these agreements and negotiations, there are always extremists. On both fronts, there are divisions. It's fragmented because different factions believe in the differing methods of achieving a solution to the conflict. Some believe in violent means, others believe in non-violent means. And that makes it difficult to push through whether it's the declaration or whether it's the objectives of certain agreements. And no one will pick it up to take it further forward once there's fighting that breaks out or once there's violence that's being used.
And the murder of Rabin more or less began a process in which the Oslo Accords were eventually undermined.
The most recent attempt at peacemaking in the Middle East came in 2020 at the Abraham Accords.
The idea is that Israel wants to end its diplomatic isolation in the region. They want to have normalized relations with many of their neighbors. Israel has made peace deals with countries like Egypt. So now they were after other countries such as Morocco, United Arab Emirates, right? Qatar, etc., to make peace with them so that Israel will have more legitimacy in terms of its existence.
To all of Israel's friends in the Middle East, those who are with us today and those who will join us tomorrow, I say, Assalamu alaikum. Peace unto thee. Shalom.
The Palestinians are glaringly missing from this picture. And this is one of the reasons why.
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
This is a controversial move not recognized by the international community. The city of Jerusalem contains sites sacred to both Jews and Muslims. And despite Israel's occupation of the whole of Jerusalem after the 1967 war, Palestinians continue to see East Jerusalem as the capital in any discussions of Palestinian statehood.
The whole context behind the Abraham Accords were two things. First, the regional climate at that time was in a period of de-escalation. And the second part was that there was a kind of fatigue in the Arab world about Palestinian leadership in being capable or competent enough to find a solution to end the conflict.
After all, Israel has the most advanced economy in its neighborhood, right? And can, get a lot of business and profits. So the formula was this: let's normalize relations. In return, Israel will provide them with intelligence, security arrangements, as well as technology that it could give to this country, help them with their agriculture, So that became the basis for the Abrahamic Accords. Another game plan of the Abrahamic Accord was the following, that it will help to further isolate Iran, right? Because if Iran is claiming that Israel is an illegitimate state, and all these Arab states are recognizing Israel, Hamas and Iran were very worried that the next country that might make peace and join the Abrahamic Accord was Saudi Arabia, which would have been a game changer because of the political weight of Saudi Arabia.
Subsequently, Saudi Arabia, its Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman came out to give an interview with Fox News, and he said, "We are getting closer to Israel by the day."
If Saudi Arabia were to recognize Israel, then really there would be no reason for others not to follow suit. That would have compounded the Palestinian sense that they had been totally sidelined.
But before Saudi Arabia signed the Abraham Accords, the October 7 attack happened.
It's going to be extremely difficult to pick up the pieces this time around, since you have violence, both in terms of Hamas's terror surge on October 7 and the Israeli response in Gaza that is going to leave two communities broken, traumatized to be sure, without the sorts of leaders and leadership that is required to make the kinds of decisions that were made during the Oslo years.